It was built to last 17 years, but the Red RM Routemaster Bus is driving into its 4th decade.
In today's modern climate, one of the major factors is cost. And this old baby will cost you 1/3 of what one of these new vehicles would.
They are a bus before the time, really. They're very, very built well, and they'll last another 30 years for the Routemaster.
Like many examples of London architecture, it also has its critics.
Well, of course, the Routemaster is probably a member of the oldest working museum in the world now.
Well, the thing is, the Routemaster has a very friendly face. The newer buses are terribly square and not very welcoming. But the Routemaster, you know, it comes along, it looks so friendly, and when you're getting on, there's somebody standing on the platform ready to welcome you. You go through a sort of lobby.
Morning, Adam. Can I take a
then you go into the sitting area, and it's all like sort of being at home and very reassuring.
Please hold tight now.
The RM's got a very simple, conventional layout. You've got the engine, 2 shock absorbers which are coiled, front axle, and then it runs through the flywheel, fluid flywheel, exhaust, runs out and around and straight down the end of the bus, prop shaft, gearbox, another prop shaft, and then we come to the final bit, the transmission, the back axle on the right-hand side, which is a small back axle. You can undo the bolts, drop it down, new one up, finished. Not like the new ones where you've got double reduction drives and Christ knows what, where you've got to pull half the bus apart to get at them. That's about it, really.
This bus is the last built to house an endangered species, the conductor.
Could you take a seat, sir, please? We're going as far as Oxford Circus. Traffic lights now, man, and be careful. This is traffic lights. Be very, very careful, please. Only Oxford Circus now. Be careful.
We're all going on a summer holiday. No more working for a week or two. Fun and laughter on our...
The Routemaster's predecessors made London's double-decker an institution, a mobile monument as familiar as Tower Bridge and Trafalgar Square, recognised across the world. In their heyday, when private cars were beyond most pockets, buses in London were cheap to ride on and profitable for their owners. The world's biggest urban passenger travel authority, London Transport.
By its easily recognised visual characteristics, London Transport signposts the traveller and speeds him through this giant sprawl. The circle and crossbar on every bus stop and station. The bullseye symbol is there to reassure.
Even a century ago, buses had the same layout of driver high up at the front and 2 floors for passengers linked by a spiral staircase at the back. Before World War I, buses were covering 500 million miles of London streets a year. In the 1920s, free enterprise flourished. Over 400 private operators touted for London passengers. Such unbridled competition was frowned upon, and an Act of Parliament in 1933 created London Transport. Its chief, Lord Ashfield, promised a properly coordinated system of passenger transport, avoiding wasteful and unnecessary competition. In 1933, the city had 40 different types of bus. London Transport wanted a single, tailor-made model. After the war, the need for a new bus was all the more pressing. In October 1947, plans were drawn up.
The Routemaster is a remarkable vehicle. Its history goes back many, many years. It's really the ultimate development of the traditional London open platform bus. When the Routemaster was first developed in the 1950s, an amazing amount of time and effort was spent on producing a vehicle which, in its day, was staggeringly ahead of its time. A very advanced specification, which even today compares quite favourably with brand new vehicles.
One of the engineers on the design team was Colin Curtis.
It was decided that we should work on the principle of evolution and not revolution. In other words, we would utilise existing experience from previous models, experience of development work we had done and tested in service, so that we weren't creating a completely new and untried vehicle.
It might have looked like its predecessors, but underneath it was a bus of the future, a schoolboy's dream come true. The world's most up-to-date bus will be the first to have power steering, hydraulic brakes, automatic gears, independent springs and fresh air heating for the passengers. Features unheard of even on most cars of the day.
Since London Transport had been involved in assembling Handley Page Halifax aircraft during the war, a good deal of experience was drawn from this particular work in that body parts would all be interchangeable on the bus.
It could be put together and taken apart like a Meccano kit. Extensive use of aluminium saved weight. Carrying 64 passengers, 8 more than its predecessor, the Routemaster weighed the same. Materials new to buses, like fiberglass, were used for the bonnet and emergency back door. Every detail was considered. A cubbyhole was made so the conductor could stand out of the way of passengers. And the cockpit was designed around the driver. Douglas Scott had designed everything from toasters to heaters to cookers. He was responsible for the Routemaster's look, though some of his early designs were thought too radical.
I think that any design comes off if attention is paid to every detail of it, but the right attention.
Scott even designed the seat fabric.
You'll notice that the vertical stripe is a double bright yellow. Well, now the idea of that was that when the material was new, the stripes were there and they could be seen as part of the design. As the material wore down, although the colours did fade, the brightness of the exposed cross yellows kept the whole seat looking clean and wholesome to sit on and brightened the interior of the bus.
The Routemaster was designed in-house by London Transport staff with a view to being an attractive piece of street furniture and at the same time serve the public of London.
Building the first Routemaster prototype took 3 years, and there was another 5 years of testing before it went into full production. Nearly 100 people were involved in its development. Their attention to detail was more appropriate to a spaceship than a bus.
When the design has been approved, the bus is tested again. This time for 6 weeks at full speed, 200 miles a day over a special proving ground. Bumps and bends are there in abundance. And if in all conditions the bus behaves itself according to plan, it will at last be judged thoroughly fit for public service in London. The revolutionary design of the Routemaster ensures that it is not only safer and easier to drive than the older buses, but also more comfortable to ride in.
Demanding standards were set for new buses. The tilt test result delighted the designers.
Oh, she passed that with flying colours. There was no problem whatsoever. Went way over the figure, and it pleased us no end.
So in addition to day-to-day care in the garage, after 3.5 to 4 years on the road, every standard bus of the 8,000 in the world's largest unified bus fleet comes into the largest public service vehicle overhaul factory in the world, Allenham. A greater initial cost, but a more efficient and, in the long run, more economical way of carrying the load into the future.
Convinced that their monopoly would last forever, London Transport had created a vast service centre in anticipation of expanding its fleet.
First, it loses its identity. It's rotated like a toy on this inverter. 3.5 years accumulation of oil-bound road dirt is pressure hosed away. Everything must be progressing continuously towards the reassembly
The
of...
Routemaster was built with Oldham in mind. In the 50s, the labour shortage made attractive working conditions a high priority.
A job to be done and a man to do it. Again, a principle in practice. First, bring him into a suitable space to perform his task. Next, provide him with every possible mobility. Offer him a fair incentive, and you can reasonably expect that everyone, the man, the works, the bus concern, and the public, will get the benefit of a good, fast job.
At the time, our chairman wanted to advertise the bus, and on the prototypes he put, "This is the bus of the future." We thought we could do it quietly. We didn't want to make a big show of the thing because we knew that something would go wrong.
But the biggest problem was for crews, who had to adjust to the modern lightweight design.
Well, it was a bit of a sensation. They only gave us an hour to get used to it. And on our first trip up into Crystal Palace, as we rounded the roundabout into the first stop, I found that the so light on the front wheels that when I applied the brake, it skidded. And it frightened the life out of me, I must admit. It frightened the passengers waiting at the stop as well.
I know when I was first in London and the Routemasters were all new. You know, we all knew that it had been specially designed for London, and it was obviously so good for its work. We used to travel on those lovely long routes right across London, and you could look at, I mean, I always used to try and get the front seat on the top deck on the 73. It was absolutely super. We used to go from Oxford Circus to the Albert Hall for the proms every year, night after night.
It was 1959 before the RM went into full production. Over 2,700 were built during the 1960s. On the streets, they were a hit. Buses were travelling 20 million miles a year. It was a tribute to British craftsmanship. Suppliers were proud of their association with the Routemaster.
Everything's pip-hip and tickety-boo in San Francisco. For it's London Week, don't you know? And a double-decker bus hobnobs with the cable cars. The Union Jack flies.
But back home, the London bus had a competitor, the car. In the 50s, the car population in London had tripled, slowing traffic to speeds little faster than the horse bus era. But planners made the car's needs a priority.
Revolutionary new measures are announced to cope with London's parking problem. And this is one of them, the 2-hour parking meter. It's no good smiling sweetly at a police constable. These things are glamour-proof and quite infallible. And both the time and the charge can be adjusted, not of course by the motorist, according to local circumstances. In fact, the darn things just aren't human.
Despite the publicity, by the mid-60s, London buses were losing £5 million a year. When cuts were made, bus crews made their feelings known in the traditional British way.
Here's a picture of 8,400 buses not being there, and that's quite something. For it's 21 years since London's buses were completely stopped by an official strike. So London walks to work.
New economies meant revolutionary new designs which threatened the RM.
London's always had double-decker buses with engine at the front and entrance at the rear. Now these conventional buses are being compared with a design that reverses the familiar pattern with engine at the rear, entrance at the front. The 72-seater Atlantean gives more passenger space. That's obviously an advantage.
It was a radical new layout where the driver could collect the fares and make the conductor redundant.
It's the driver who operates the front entrance door. At least one passenger was distinctly puzzled by the whole thing.
London Transport bought time by stretching the RM 3 feet and adding 8 more seats, but it was not enough.
When we saw that one-person operation was going to come in elsewhere, we did produce the rear-engine Routemaster, which was capable of one-man operation and utilise 60% of common parts of the basic Routemaster design.
Curtis and his team swapped the Routemaster around for one-person operation, but it was too late. By the late 60s, London Transport were buying driver-only buses off the peg. Plans were laid down for phasing out Routemasters and their conductors.
As you can see, I'm an elderly party with a shopping trolley, and a lot of my journeys are for shopping. Well, the conductor gives lots of reassurance, and some of them crack lovely jokes and give you a bit of enjoyment on your journey as well.
Work-wise, I'm actually a fashion model based mainly in London, and the buses for me are great for work, great for getting around. The good thing about the old buses is they've got no doors, so you can hop on and off in between, like the stops, which you're not supposed to do, but it's great. Handy if you're in a rush to get to an appointment or a test.
Well, to be helpful to people, you know, to be helpful and to help the old people and the women and children getting on the bus and to help call out places of interest. Right. Now, this is John Lewis. Anybody want this stop? John Lewis. We're going this as far as we go now, please.
They know all about London. They know to point you in the right direction. And just they're friendly, it's, you know, safer, especially for a woman. I think it is a conductor on hand at all times.
Peter Newman runs a fleet of driver-only sightseeing buses in London.
Well, of course, the myth of the open platform is only strange to London. London Transport say that they have to keep the Routemaster on the streets of London because the open platform is popular. Well, of course, the open platform is popular. Lots of people get on and off between stops. The problem is the people that get on between stops don't pay. One-person operation, as far as a driver is concerned, is better too, because it allows him to talk to people and to see people. The engine's at the rear, so he has a much quieter environment, and of course he hasn't got that confounded bell going in his ear all day long.
Because I do not like one-man operated buses. I just don't like them. My daughter works on them, and she says she likes them, but in my opinion, and it's only my opinion, I don't think they're paid enough. That is one reason why I don't do them.
Routemasters were pensioned off to make way for the new models. 40 went to Sri Lanka. Through the 70s, London buses continued to lose money. Since the launch of the RM, passenger journeys had halved. Huge cuts in routes and staff were called for. The bus of the future seemed to be the bus of the past. The grand design of the Aldenham Service Centre had never fulfilled its promise. Progressively run down since it began, by 1986 it was closed.
A job to be done and a man to do it. Again, a principle in practice. Offer him a fair incentive, and you can reasonably expect that everyone, the man, the works, the bus concern, and the public, will get the benefit of a good, fast job.
When Britain wound the clock back and opened its bus routes to competition, the RM, that product of monopoly and nationalisation, found new supporters.
The Routemaster was designed for rapid boarding, rapid departure, and in a competitive environment that is quite important. It means you can get to the bus stop in front of a conventional one-man operated bus and therefore gain more custom. And anyway, the passengers like having a conductor who can talk to them, give them change, explain where the bus is going and so on and so forth. So the whole concept is very attractive from the passenger's point of view. The Routemasters benefited from regular and excellent maintenance at Aldenham and Chiswick Works in London. This meant that when we bought what on paper was a 20, 25-year-old vehicle, in practice it was in the condition of a vehicle that was perhaps only 5 years old, and that's been a major factor in persuading operators to carry on running them out in the provinces. There is no way that we as a company, or I think the industry, could afford the development costs that went into this vehicle. You have to understand that those costs were spread over an order of 2,700 Routemasters. Today it's very unlikely that any operator or even a consortium of operators would buy in such large numbers.
Over 300 of the redundant Routemasters were snapped up all over the country and painted in bright new colours. By the end of the 80s, London too was opened up to private operators. LT's monopoly was finished. Its garages now have to show a profit. But the old RMs have won a stay of execution. With conductors to take fares, they are faster than the opposition.
The Routemaster for London Transport is a very good bus to run. It was designed for them, designed by them, and designed for their use, and they can afford to run them. It's cost them millions and millions of pounds to run the Routemaster over the years, and it's costing them millions of, well, thousands, hundreds of thousands of pounds to run them now.
There are very clear arguments about why they are much cheaper to maintain, why they're much cheaper to run, they use less fuel, and we believe that the Routemaster costs no more to operate per mile than any other bus in the fleet.
In the new competitive market, a bus in the garage isn't earning its keep, so ease of servicing is crucial.
The whole design of the Routemaster was with maintenance in mind, such that any job that need to be done at a garage could be done in the space of a day. The ideal was that the bus could run in the morning, come in, say, for an engine change during the middle of the day, and go out again the same evening.
To take the engine out, we take off this front bar, which is held on by 2 bolts, front grille, 2 nuts. The complete wing comes off, 2 bolts under here, 1 bolt there, and we lift the whole wing off, which makes everything accessible. Pull the engine out and it's finished. Built up and back in within 7 to 8 hours. So everything on this vehicle is really built to do in under 1 day.
Others are not so straightforward.
We have to take off the boot lid, the centre panel, the 2 outside corners, the bottom corners, the bottom bar, and you've got a framework inside there all still to be removed, untold pipework, and then you can start to take the engine out. So to do a complete engine change on one of these, we're talking 2.5 days.
Finding spares in the 90s for a bus built in the 60s requires ingenuity.
With a Routemaster, you cannot guarantee spares. Nobody can. And the only reason that people are able to keep them on the road is that they have to buy second-hand parts, and they have to cannibalise existing vehicles to keep the remainder of the fleet going.
Near the Grimethorpe Colliery in Yorkshire is Britain's biggest bus scrapyard.
It's been like 20 years since I left school, from the age of being like 15 to like 35 now. Well, we're bus dismantlers. What we do is like with the London Transport contract that we've got, we collect vehicles from London, we break them up, and we take the spares back down to London for them to reuse again. Well, the Routemaster is a bus of its own, actually. I mean, it was a bus before its time, and it's a solid aluminium body, and it's really, really strong. That's why we have to use the mechanical grab to pull it apart. since we've had the contract, we've broken the region of round about between 1,500 to about 2,000 Routemasters.
Cannibalisation is not a good idea because it costs you a lot of money. Firstly, you have to have a guy who takes the parts off that you want. He has to know what he's taking off. Secondly, you've got to transport it down to wherever the other vehicle is. Then you've got to get another man to take the defective part off and put it and replace it with a bit that you send down. You don't know whether the part you've taken off the other vehicle is good, is bad, indifferent. It might last a day, it might last a week. Everybody, I think, if they're honest about it, will say cannibalisation is the most expensive way of keeping any type of vehicle, let alone a Routemaster, on the road.
Because it's been so well maintained through its life, the Routemaster even now is a very economical vehicle to operate. Availability of spare parts is not a problem, and even now the condition of the vehicles is really first class. There is no reason why these Routemasters can't carry on operating in service for many years still to come.
Whatever happens, the Routemaster will never be short of supporters.
Because bus is the best way to see London. You know, from the upper deck you can see everything that goes on. You can even see things you can't see normally. It's absolutely super.
It's very sad. These keep the traffic flowing much better, actually. I'd be very sad to see them go out, you know. And I suppose they call it progress. To me, it's not progress.
The Routemaster is the last of the line, if you like, that was designed to a specification by London Transport, and current vehicles are much more to a manufacturer's standard.
It is said that they cost perhaps 50% more than any other regular bus to buy when they were new. But, of course, taking a 30-year view, that money has been handsomely repaid.
Today's modern buses are off the peg. This vehicle was designed and built to work London, and it survived for 30 years, and hopefully it'll survive for another 30.
Top Gear's back in half an hour here on BBC Two. The latest models on test, the biker who skis on tarmac, and the Bentley Continental R.